In the previous video, we talked about some strategies you can use to exude confidence and the approaches you should take to prevent incivilities. But the fact is, it could still happen. So if there is a time that you have to respond to incivility, the most important thing to do is to keep your composure. So I have this picture here of a very tranquil lake scene with this idea of trying to stay calm. And it can be difficult in the moment if emotions are elevated, but you need to view incivility as a teaching moment. And how can you kindly, firmly correct that behavior and maybe draw attention to, again, how you're trying to support everyone in the classroom. So when possible, smile through your firmness. If you catch students doing things, perhaps they're on websites or looking at resources that are beyond the class. If you can smile as you correct them and try to redirect their attention, that will be appreciated and hopefully a signal to the other students that they too should be paying attention. Explain why you're correcting that, and don't ignore or tolerate the behavior. Sometimes in a college classroom, that might mean that you need to catch them as they're leaving the room and pull them aside and say, hey, can I visit with you for a moment? It might mean having to follow up with them via email or before the next class. Sometimes, it's correcting them in the moment if the case calls for it, but the longer you allow it to continue, the more difficult it's going to be to address. And again, recognize that the other students who are there, they're likely being distracted by that behavior as well. And so you're trying to create that conducive learning environment for everyone, even if it means making one of those students uncomfortable in the moment. So there are many other classroom incivilities that you could encounter that are discussed in the book. So for your discussion post, the first topic this week will be asking you to consider an approach that you would take to preventing or minimizing a classroom civility. So there's this list, and what I'd like you to do is select one of these that you think might be a little tricky to address, or pick one that you think is a common incivility that you would need to know how to approach. Or you could look to see what other students haven't yet addressed, and you might pick one that's new and provide some advice for that one. So you can use your textbook. You can also look online for resources, and let's just give each other some strategies that we could use to address these common classroom incivilities. The final thing I want to leave you with in this video is an approach that my twin sister taught me. She had been a high school ag teacher for a number of years, and when I started teaching at the college level full time, I said, I have this situation, I'm not sure how to address it, I've never had to talk to a student about this, and she told me about this open the front door framework that is often used in conflict resolution. And so the OTFD in open the front door each stands for a different word, and so we start with observe, and this is where you state what you have seen. So I see that you are falling asleep in my class. Then you move on to think. And in this one, you express what you think or what you imagine others might be thinking. So I think that you are not taking care of yourself and you're coming to class tired. Then you move on to feel. So this is where you express your feelings about this situation. I feel that you are not getting the most impact out of being in class and learning what you should be learning because you're falling asleep. And then desire is where you state what you would like to have happen. So in the future, are there some strategies or approaches you could use to perhaps get more sleep? Are you taking care of yourself? Are there other things going on that perhaps we could talk about to make sure that you have the best learning experience possible in my course? So this is just a quick way to walk through this framework to bring it up. And again, I when I have these one-on-one sessions, I really do want to try to start from a place of caring and express that I do care about them as an individual. And they're usually a little less bitter about being called into my office to talk about the situation. And it makes it a little more productive as we go through some potential solutions. So I wanted to give another example that I often have to address, and that is if I suspect plagiarism. And that could be, now it could be using AI, or it could be just cheating by copying and pasting content from other sources without attribution. So you can see here how I might phrase my observe, like what did I notice about their paper? And then what does that make me think? When I see those things, I often think that they didn't write it or they aren't citing it correctly. And then that's a concern to me because I feel that academic integrity is essential for fair evaluation. And I want to make sure your work reflects your own understanding. And then finally, desire. So this is what I'd like us to talk about, how you wrote this paper. I often will ask students, how did you approach writing this paper? And that usually makes it pretty evident what shortcuts they took. And then I might say, well, we're going to clarify what happened, and then if we need to, we'll talk about academic integrity policy and what the next steps will be, including possibly getting a 0 on the assignment and being reported to that office. So that's an approach you could take. I can't say I write out the script every time, but I try to keep those concepts in mind as I'm having that tough conversation. So keep in mind that you will get better as you go. Address issues as soon as possible, or they might only get worse and even spread. But keep in mind that your vast majority of students are going to be respectful and interested in learning. So while 1 or 2 may have some of these incivilities, in the classroom, the bulk of those students are really going to be invested and want to learn. So there's times where despite what you've done, it's elevated or escalated to a point that you need some additional help. So if that is the case, you should start by asking other colleagues for advice. Have you encountered this before? What advice would you give me to address this? In my department, we're small enough that those students may have had issues in other instructors, and we can talk about strategies that may or may not have helped before. You should talk to your supervisor, let them know what's going on, and maybe they need to step in and intervene. You should reach out to your dean's office. Usually there's an academic associate dean or someone at that level who can help. You should refer students to additional resources, whether that be the writing center, the tutoring center, the counseling center, whatever that case is. And then if you really think it's a significant issue, you should check to see if your university has a student of concern reporting system. So at Texas Tech, we can submit a report, and it covers a wide range of things, but one of those areas is about academic disruptions or incivilities, among other things. So that's always an option. So in review, we've discussed that these incivilities can range from minor disruptions to more serious behaviors that need immediate attention. We should begin with prevention. That means clear expectations, well-designed syllabi, consistent policies, and creating that respectful, inclusive classroom environment. Your response to the incivility should match the severity of the behavior and avoid escalation. So address it promptly but calmly and privately if necessary. You can exude confidence by commanding class attention, showing you care. There's a typo, I'll fix that. Setting ground rules, modeling desired behavior. These incivilities can be addressed using those techniques and active listening, and then that open the front door framework I introduced. And finally, if these things are happening, you need to document them objectively. What happened? When did it happen? What did you do? What did they do? and then follow institutional procedures for more serious or repeated behaviors.